So is he missing tonight?
He is out of town.
Okay.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the regular meeting of the Logan Municipal Council for September the 6th, 2022. Our opening ceremony this evening, short as it might be, will be from Mark Anderson.
I've been told that I can't do short from some people, but we'll see. So this past week, I was at a conference, and we were able to go to dinner with one of my friends from New Jersey, and he also owns a business, albeit a very similar field, different business. He does manufacturing, and we do retail. But he's very astute when it comes to business, and he's a numbers person, so he likes to dig into numbers and how things work. And his kids are, he has 4 kids, and we have 4 kids, and he has 2 boys and 2 girls, and we have 2 boys and 2 girls. So we always have to catch up with our families and kind of see how everyone's doing. And as we were talking about our kids and getting caught up on what they were all doing and who was going to school and who was going where, and all of a sudden he just stopped and he said, "Did you see that article a couple of weeks ago about how much it costs to raise a child?" Mm-hmm. And I said, "Yes, I did. It's quite interesting." And he's like, "They are absolutely wrong." And I was like, "Really? You know, how did you come up with that?" Because I know he really researches everything very, very aggressively. So I was like, "How did you come up with that?" He said, "The number that he came up with is totally wrong because it doesn't cost you $250,000. It costs you everything." And I said, "What do you mean by that?" And he said, "If you make $50,000 a year, it still costs you everything. If you make $250,000 a year, it still costs you everything." And it's all just relative to where you are in life and your station. And as we kind of talked about that, it just made a lot of sense to me because it just depends on where you're at and what you have. And so in this situation, I thought this applies great to the city because what does it cost to run a city? It costs everything.
We have.
It costs everything, you know. And so as city council, how important is that for us to keep that in mind, that doesn't matter how much money the city brings in, we're probably going to spend it because there's always a pothole that needs to be fixed. There's always a water line that breaks. There's always, a bid that comes in much higher than we anticipated. And so you just never have enough. There's always something else we can fix. There's always something else we can improve on. So as a member of city council, I try and keep that in mind, that it's very easy for us to spend everything. And I think it's admirable that we stay under budget and that you've done a wonderful job with that, Mayor Daines. And we have great financial advisors that keep us on top of things and are able to set some money aside for those rainy days when we really need it. And so it's important that we remember our duty as members of city council, that it does cost everything to run our city, but we can control that everything and make sure we set some aside for a rainy day. All right, if you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, I appreciate that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is the acceptance of the minutes and the approval of the agenda for this evening.
I would move acceptance of the agenda and the minutes. I sent Teresa just a couple minor changes, but I will make that motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further comment?
No.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This is the time where we will take questions and comments for the mayor and/or for the council from the public. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes or less and that they not be otherwise on the agenda. If anyone cares to come forward.
You did number 4.
Oh, no, but I'll do that later. If anybody would like to come forward, please do so. Seeing no one, I'll bring it back to the council and tell you that number 4, which I missed, I just pointed out, our regular meeting schedule is the 1st and 3rd Tuesdays at 5:30. We are also on Facebook Live so that you can watch from the comfort of your couch if you prefer. YouTube. So comfort of your couch if you prefer, but we'd love to have you here. I'll turn the time over to the mayor.
All right, several items on my mayor and staff reports tonight. First of all, we'd like to ask for council ratification for a reappointment of Gary Olson to the Historic Preservation Committee. He has served on that committee for quite some time, but has some specific expertise as a contractor, particularly with historic buildings. We'd like to keep that expertise if you're willing to reappoint him as he's willing to serve. And then the Land Use Appeal Board, John Kerr and Josh Runhar have agreed to serve. Again, that's not an entity we need to have often, but when an issue arises, we need to have that in place. So we appreciate their willingness to serve and would request their ratification.
I have great respect. I know all three of them. Have great respect for them and would move that we ratify that reappointment.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next.
Perfect. We will now also ask for the ratification for our new city engineer. Our code calls out that there are a couple of positions, one being the city attorney and one being the city engineer, that do require ratification by council. So would you like, Darren Farr is the new city engineer. Would you like him to give a little bit of background first, or would you like to move forward with the ratification first and then he can tell a little bit about himself?
Oh, let's have him tell about himself first.
All
Yeah,
right.
and then we can choose.
Then we can choose. Exactly. Come on.
And his family's looking a little nervous.
It is just a ratification. We've hired him, and we're delighted his family can be here to join us tonight, and we'll have him introduce them. So Darren.
Thank you very much, Mayor Daines and members of council. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. Over the last couple of weeks, since I've started with Logan, I've had the absolute pleasure of getting to know the staff and the people that work here in Logan. I'm pretty impressed. It's a good organization. I kind of know that a little bit. The past year I've been in Nibley, and it seems like most of our staff there are from the Logan city, and there's a lot of good staff that have come from there to Nibley. But I am pretty happy to be here. Before I was in Nibley, I spent 20 years in the Phoenix metro area, working in different municipalities there, as well as a consultant engineer. And so a pretty wide range of experience in engineering, and I feel like I have the qualifications to be here and to be able to work in Logan. I am a USU graduate, so it's good to be back. My wife is from the area. I'm actually originally from Arizona, but my wife's from the area, and she offered to have me come back with her. Yeah, so we're excited to be here. I have 4 kids, one that's married in St. George, one that's down in Brazil on a mission for the LDS church, and then a senior in high school who has a soccer game tonight and just couldn't break away to come here, so she's fully engaged in soccer. And then my freshman that's sitting here with us, along with my lovely wife Cody. And that's a little bit about me. If you have any questions, I definitely welcome any of those.
No, we'd just like to hear from you in your own words.
Very good. Good.
Yes, great qualifications. We're delighted that he's agreed to join Logan City. He's going to be a great asset. And again, just sort of the formality of a ratification.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I would move ratification for Darren Farr as our engineer.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
See, you're official now.
Perfect. The third item on the agenda is we just wanted to recognize Campbell Scientific. They have made a nice donation to the Logan River Golf Course. As you know, they do weather stations and...
Oh, wait a minute.
You have to do an oath of office.
Oh, I jumped right ahead. You're right. You do need to come forward for that. Thank you for getting me back.
Sorry, I didn't know there was an oath.
So,
We would have been
Mayor,
asked for it, I'm sure.
is he taking Bill Young's place?
Yes, Bill has retired.
Is your
Big shoes to fill.
mechanical engineering?
Civil.
Civil.
Civil,
Gotcha.
yeah.
You have huge shoes to
I
fill.
know.
Because I think he was like a size 13.
And after all the running around he did, they went to
Okay,
50.
guys, settle down.
Repeat after me again. Just state your name.
I, Darren Farr,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and Constitution of the State of Utah,
and Constitution of the State of Utah,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office
and that I will discharge the duties of my office
as Logan City Engineer,
as Logan City Engineer,
to which I have been appointed
to which I have been appointed
with fidelity.
with fidelity.
Thank you. Now I will go on with the next. Sorry, Darren, about,
That's okay, he was just sitting there going, whoa.
just trying to make the meeting move along quickly, which I know most people appreciate. We wanted to recognize Campbell Scientific, who donated a weather station valued at about $12,000 to the Logan River Golf Course. That allows us to connect our irrigation system to the actual weather conditions. So if there's rain or whatever, then it automatically allows us to reset the sprinklers, save water. So that was a very nice gift from them, and we appreciate all of our entities, throughout parks and other areas of the city trying to save water, as we know our citizens are doing. So thank you to Campbell Scientific. The next item that we need to discuss with council, we brought this up I think a couple of months ago. It's kind of an interesting situation way back, those of you that remember back to the Enron crisis, when suddenly power prices got so high and the city went through millions and millions of dollars of reserves very quickly. At that time, a surcharge was put in place in case power rates went really high again. And we have, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe we've ever had to initiate the surcharge, but our power rates have gotten so high that we have to implement the surcharge. So we're basically giving you a heads up. Our citizens will see that on their bills. Mark's going to give you a little background on what kind of power costs we're seeing, what kind of increases our citizens and our business will see, and we're sorry, but that is the reality of what prices are these days. So,
I'm told from my staff they did it once before, but that was before my time, so.
okay, so maybe one other time.
Knowledge of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're kind of in an unprecedented time in everything, right? Power's no exception. We held off enacting the surcharge, although we could have done it several of the months from last year. But we wanted to kind of give our industrial customers kind of a warning that this was coming, so we swallowed that with our reserves. But we let them know that the January shortfall would be passed on in this surcharge. So we came up,
Or you mean July, right?
what, sorry.
The July surcharge.
Yeah, July. So in July, our budgeted power came up short $709,000 from what actual costs were. So we're dividing that amongst all kilowatt hours coming out here it's coming in September, but it's really the August billings. And so that calculates out to, and we have to estimate, right? Because we don't know exactly what the usage is, but we make a guesstimate, and then we'll reconcile that later. We don't just guess and then go on with our way. But that comes out to 1.801 cents per kilowatt hour. To give you perspective, our base residential rate is 9 cents a kilowatt hour, so this will bump people to 10.8 cents for their first tier per kilowatt hour. And just easy math, if you used 1,000 kilowatt hours that month, which, Jeannie, I'll bet you're right around there on your bill. I don't know. That would come out to $18 of a surcharge for that month. Today, for many hours, we were short, so we had to buy on the market. We paid $963 a megawatt hour. So to give you perspective again, we're buying it at $9,
We're selling it.
We're selling it at 9 cents, and we're buying it at 90 cents. So we're buying it at 10 times what we're selling it back to the citizens. That's why this surcharge gets kicked in.
Give them an idea what, in a typical month before this surge, we would have paid.
Well, my average blended wholesale in the past has been about 5.5 cents or $55 a megawatt hour. So we're paying $963 today.
So that's why
The
we've
market's kinda
been
nuts.
sending out all kinds of social messages saying,
This-
especially those peak hours from,
Yeah.
4:35 when solar kind of goes down until 9, please limit whatever use, because that's what we're paying for power.
Yep.
And it's supposed to be higher if we have to buy any next?
Well, and,
Well, I
it
mean,
might
this
go as
heat
high
wave,
as
right, it's got demand
30.
up all over the western United States, and so
1,300 or something?
power production strained.
It's going to
I
get
wouldn't
cooler
doubt
next
it.
week, so.
I don't know. Yeah, it's supposed to cool. That'll help a lot.
So Mark, when we first had this discussion, Uchi was saying that she had secured baseload power from October through December. And she had, it was the summer months that she was struggling with.
July and August were her two difficult months
Okay.
that she couldn't.
So are we exceeding baseline? Are we exceeding the capacity that we had already bargained for, so to speak,
Yes.
by that? And it was 7, did I hear it was 7? I want to say megawatts, but it's bigger than that.
Well, today, for several hours, we were 10 to 20 megawatts short of kind of contracted power. So that 10 to 20 megawatts we had to buy on the market
At the 900.
at the
plus.
900 plus, yeah.
so because the heat wave has continued, there may very well be a surcharge because it's delayed. This is August bill, correct?
Correct.
It's that people are receiving.
So this
So
money
it may
we're
hit your
spending,
bill next month as well.
yeah, the money we're spending right now will be calculated for August, and I have no doubt we'll do a surcharge in August as
We're
well.
talking about a single charge for on the August bill. Single. It's not every,
No, it's calculated every month depending on, and that'll relax a lot as cooler weather comes on.
And what's the commercial?
Same thing.
Same rate.
But for some of our big industrial customers, that looks like $50,000 of a surcharge.
So Mark, is it, I've been, noodling on this, I should say. Is it time for us to make sure that when projects come forward through Planning Commission, that there's an electrical component that is discussed?
If I had my way, we would not allow any more electrical load until we figure out our shortfalls of electrical capacity, but that's not my call.
But would it be prudent for us to put that into the mix?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Because we're adding some large capacity loads with big customers in town right now, and large apartment complexes.
Right. So,
And again, we thought we had a potential chunk to buy with the Enchant project that we discussed, but it looks like that project is not going to come to pass.
so what would be a process whereby we would initiate that kind of review at the Planning Commission stage?
We're looking at the impact fees that can be charged for municipal power facilities in the future. We haven't dug deep into it yet, but that's where we're starting.
Are there other communities that include a electric draw as part of their planning commission required, like that the planning commission can refuse a project? Is
Yeah, I
that-
couldn't speak to that, I don't know.
Because that would
That's
be-
what you're asking.
Exactly. I think, we have water and sewer give a report, they look at every project, fire looks at every project. Why do we not have electrical looking at the projects?
And in the past, we do look at every project, but it's just oh, power's over here, we gotta get it here for this customer, we need this big of a transformer, we need to run these wires. That's kind of been our review. But I mean, if you're gonna ask the power department if they have the power to serve, our answer would be, yeah, on the open market, which affects everybody's rates.
Yeah.
So,
Not just the new project, but
not just the new
everybody.
project.
So Mark, I mean, the Light and Power is doing a rate study. I mean, we've talked about we're going to have some adjustments, and then again, we will be looking at the impact fee. So new service, potentially would have to pay the impact.
But
So
that's I mean, if you're looking at $900 a megawatt hour in the open market, because you're at capacity right now, and you add something that's going to take another 5 megawatts per day or something like that, is it that prudent for us to be doing that at this point in
Those are the
time?
discussions we're having.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we're really not even certain what tools are at our disposal.
Yeah.
Can you actually
Enforce that.
charge a differential rate? I don't think so.
But can you turn down a project because you do not have capacity?
We do have some control of that. I'm not sure we could drop down to a single-family home type level, but
But for large,
large commercial
Large
we already
commercial.
have.
Now, I want to clarify.
Yeah, there have been some projects that have come and been interested. I can think of several
No, but
that
they-
we've just said,
You're too
there's no
big.
way we can serve.
But they've not gone to the project review, submitting a project kind of review stage.
No, these are sort of companies that are interested in coming to Logan and having those conversations, and we just say, can't do it.
Because we would love to have them, obviously. I mean, it's not that we would not like to have them, but I do think that, the fact that everyone suffers if we overload the system,
Yeah.
maybe we have to look at it in a different way.
And I want to clarify that, we have a large portion of our power, that's under different contractual power purchase agreements.
Right.
It's just when we push on up into here because of extreme heat or additional loads, that's where we get exposed to the open market. It's not the whole
Right.
basket
No,
of
no,
power.
no. I know
We're
it's
paying
not the
that
whole
kind of money.
basket, but if the whole basket all of a sudden gets half again as big,
Yeah.
then you've planned a year in advance, and that sort of thing.
And our peaks are hitting right now. A lot of people like to say, well, what about solar? Solar's done for the day, but our peaks are right now. Right now is
Yeah.
when it's 960.
So again, we love renewables. We have
Yeah.
a great deal in our portfolio during the day.
Oh, I
We
do
still
know that.
have to have,
We could have used some of that today, for sure. In the middle of the day, we were short. through
but the
middle.
base load power to provide, again, the peaks, like right now,
Well, I don't know that there's an answer to my
Right.
question at this
there's
point
no
in time.
easy
but
answer.
I do think we need to be open to a wide range discussion.
We need a bigger basket.
What about other communities that are comparable? Are they having the same situation?
Yes, in fact, I won't name any cities, but there are two that I spoke to today. One is going to do a 15% rate increase this year and 10% more next year, so that's 25% rate increase. And another one is doing 6% over the next 3 years because they're afraid to hit everybody that hard, that fast.
6% a year?
So 18% after 3 years. And, if the market keeps going nuts, that
What
may
about,
change.
what
But
about Rocky Mountain?
I don't know what Rocky Mountain Power's doing. They're so big and they have a lot more resources at their fingertips than we do.
But they
I
also
don't-
have public service
I don't know,
commissions. they
but
have
I'm
to
on
do.
Rocky Mountain Power. I'll let you know if they start jacking.
And, we are also looking into a potential, generator project, and we'll be bringing you some more details on that fairly soon. Again, we're doing an RFP to get some details on that. So we're looking at some potential solutions, but
But they can be 2 years out.
yeah, but if we don't start quickly.
They're
then
likely
we're-
2 years out at least, yeah.
So it's not,
It's not an immediate solution.
So a couple things that hurt us too was those solar projects that I came to you with amended and restated transaction schedules. We were expecting to get some of those like now, right? Right.
They're not going to be ready.
And it's not likely we'll get them by next summer either, that hurts us.
And the problem is, new projects coming online have to essentially wait in line for transmission. So a project, you know, if it comes to the UAM's board right now to say, well, this is a potential project, it's like get in line, like, what, 5 to 6 years to
Yeah.
get transmission space. So there's a bottleneck.
So what you're saying is don't run out and buy an electric car right now.
Well, at least don't plug it in until
Please
10
do.
o'clock.
Don't charge
Don't plug it in
between
till about 2 in the
4:30 and
morning.
11.
Morning, yeah.
I've got my
I'll set
alarm
my
set,
timer,
so,
yeah.
you know, about
Set my
9:30, 10 o'clock, I go plug it in, but I don't when I get home from work.
I will say the UAM's meeting a couple weeks ago was a little bit of a downer.
I know, and I'm bringing such good news right now.
No, but I mean, it's not just Logan Power, it's across the state.
No, it's across the state.
Well, it's not-
In fact, I read an article in KSL today that stated California is likely looking at blackouts because they're many megawatts over what they have capacity to generate because of the heat.
Yeah.
So again, anything you can conserve, you save on your power bill. So,
I saw an article where England, they were paying 7 times. I mean, if it was 100, now it's 700. So we're modest compared to some other places in the world. So,
Yep.
Sorry, Mark.
downer.
See you next month.
Yes, I expect he will be back next month. So,
my.
but anyway, we will continue to involve you as we have ideas, suggestions, discussions, but
But for our consumers, this is a month-to-month discussion. Like this surcharge is not, we're not saying
Forever.
your rate is going up for the rest of the year. This is a month-to-month discussion. So,
right.
At the moment.
Yeah, and I think our consumers would prefer that. I was like, I feel more comfortable with that, so.
And again, I mean, we know inflation's out there. It's too bad we're adding one more thing to it, but that's the reality of the situation. So with that cheerful news, that completes my mayor and staff reports for the day.
Thank you, Mayor. Under council business, the Planning Commission update, Northwest Fields Business Park. Jason Larson is expanding with 5 new warehouses.
But you're all on battery power, right?
750,000 square feet total, and it was conditionally approved. There was another short-term rental. I believe this was the 16th or 17th short-term rental that has been approved. There are some more in the pipeline. This is an entire house. So I like the idea that it comes to Planning Commission because it gives the neighborhood an opportunity to say, to be aware of what's going on in their neighborhood. There was a proposal submitted to create something called 100 West Executive Suites in what is the old Wonder Bread site across from the rec center. It was to be a 5-story extended stay hotel with parking on the first floor. There were some questions that Planning Commission had, and they moved to continue that discussion for a month because they had some transparency issues, and they also wanted to see how the floor plans looked. And so that is continued for a month because the architect indicated he couldn't be ready before that.
and when you say transparency, you mean the number of windows, fenestration, not like transparency to not being honest.
No, I don't mean, I
No, I'm
don't,
just saying, because I think a lot of people, when
Okay.
you hear the word transparency, they think you mean like you're being honest and upfront, but
Oh,
you
no,
mean
no.
you mean the
On the
structural
building.
design.
Structural
Okay.
design.
Sorry.
Windows transparency,
sorry,
physical windows.
I just say it because, it's
No,
like
yeah.
I'm in the world there. And then the last thing that was passed by Planning Commission, we will be discussing as a workshop item. So we'll move now to our action items. We have a public hearing on a budget adjustment. I'm going to turn the time over to Rich because he's like in charge of the entire public hearing portion of this meeting.
The first one is kind of our normal run-of-the-mill budget adjustments. Request appropriate $51,840 for the fire department. This is actually our EMS fund to fund the part-time program. As you'll recall, we had a grant that paid for this. We're now requesting, because it's important enough to operations, that we continue that on with the charges for services that we receive within the EMS fund, $51,840. But it is a new funding request. Request to appropriate $4,500 that the Neighborhood Improvement Division received from the state of Utah for construction murals. And those are the two items on that resolution.
That's part of the public art program.
It could be. It could be.
It is. Does anybody have any questions? This is a public hearing. If there are any members of the public who wish to speak to this item, please come forward. Seeing no one, I'll bring it back to the council.
I'll move acceptance of Resolution 2237.
Is there a second?
I second it, excited mostly about the second part of it.
Oh, good. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Rich?
The next resolution is a request to carry forward appropriations that were unexpended in the prior fiscal year. Most of these are for large capital. I won't go through all of them because it's like 2 pages worth or at least a page worth, but just to give you a flavor, $7 million, request to appropriate $7,039,907 for our center block plaza project. Request to appropriate $21,994,796 for various water capital projects, most specifically the water tank project. Down a little bit further, request to appropriate $6.781824 for fire stations, and we'll have a little more follow-up after this resolution on that project. And lastly, $8.5 million county road tax funds, requesting to carry those forward as well. Many, many others, but again, these are appropriations that happened in fiscal year 22. They were not completed during that fiscal year, partially because of supply chain issues and large number of capital that's on the table, and then some other ones as well.
So normally, Rich, we don't have anywhere near this many, but
This is-
because of the unusual nature of how things went this year.
And we do have several capital projects that are in progress. And
Right.
since we cut off in July, which is the worst possible time ever, everything is
Middle of
in the
construction
middle of the
season.
project.
Would you like me to make a motion to change our fiscal year?
Yes.
State first, yeah.
Let's just do it and see what they say.
Woohoo.
But again, none of this is new money.
No.
It's just existing, already budgeted money.
Anybody have any questions? This also is a public hearing. If anyone has any concerns or questions, please come to the podium, state your name. Seeing no one, I'll bring it back to council for a decision.
I'll move acceptance for Resolution 22-38.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Rich?
The last resolution is a special one. Typically, we bring resolutions forward for a workshop, and we have 2 weeks to think about it, and we bring it back for public hearing. However, we have requested of council to bring this for a public hearing. We have noticed it. Request to appropriate $3.750 of additional construction funds for our fire station. As you'll recall, we had $10 million appropriated. About 2.8 of that was used on the, 2.2, somewhere around there, was used for the acquisition of land. The remainder is used for construction. However, we've received bids and we need to appropriate a little bit more if we want to complete this project. It's a unique time. We
Otherwise,
are
it has no
probably
roof.
bidding it at the absolute peak, but we don't have a lot of choice.
Again, we had, 6 bidders, and 5 of the 6 were all very close. So that does tell us that that really is kind of what the market is. We don't have a lot of outliers. So again, and some money will be returned to this. This also has some contingency, which we hope will be returned to the fund if not needed. In addition, once the fire station property is, the current fire station property is sold, once they've moved into the new facility, that money can also be can come back to reimburse the capital account a little bit.
As I recall, we had an offer for that property last time.
No, we had a request.
No, we had a request.
Well, it wasn't an
Yeah,
offer, but.
but again, we need to, I think, do an RFP and get, certainly what is a fair price for that.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
You are comfortable with this amount, Rich?
What's that?
You are comfortable with this amount?
No.
Rich isn't comfortable with $2.
You don't have
Again, I
much-
mean,
you
a
don't
year
have much
ago,
choice.
I know, a year ago when we were planning this, I mean, we really thought the initial
We had enough money.
allocation would do it. It's a crazy market there right now.
This is not without consequences either. We are pulling this from reserves, but we had other projects in mind for the future. We'll have to see. Really, we just got to complete these 3 projects we've got going, and then we can come back and see if we're able to deal with some of those others, including the service center roof is one that's kind of been on the list for several years. At some point, we'll deal with it, but that's kind of the consequence we have, increasing costs.
It's also one that has seismic issues. Again, public safety of the fire, we opted to do that one first. So,
Makes sense.
I can attest, I work in the construction industry, and while this is substantially above what was budgeted, this is a bargain compared to what the market is.
and again, we are ready to award bids, but obviously we will not do that until we're sure we have the money to do it, and council makes that decision, so.
On that happy note, this is a public hearing. If any members of the public would like to speak to this, please come forward, state your name.
Dr. Gail Yost. I live here in Logan on First East. I just wanted to know if it's that whole corner across from Bear Mental Health was purchased and spent the money on already, so that it's not this is not something I'm asking that's kept secret. I just wanted to know how many of the houses were bought up? Was it 1 or 2 or more?
Do we want to have Chief address that?
Or I could say it.
There were 3 total properties that were acquired. A duplex on 200 North and 2 fourplexes on 100 East.
And a parking lot.
And then a parking lot and a portion of another parking lot. So there was actually 5 total pieces with 3 structures.
Thank you.
Any further questions, comments? We'll bring it back to the council.
I move acceptance of Resolution 2239. I know it's difficult, but I think it's important and even urgent at this time.
How can we skimp on public safety? How can we skimp on public safety?
Right.
Was that a second?
That's a second.
Thank you.
And the determination was already made, we needed a new fire station.
Yes.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll move now to our workshop items. You're going to do mixed use? I made Russ promise me he'd go over the whole history. Are you going to do the same thing?
I'll give you 15 minutes.
Or less.
Why?
Or less.
You got somewhere to be?
Mike is just known for his brevity.
I can do it in 15 minutes.
Because he talks fast.
This was an 85-page document. I would like the public to recognize that we looked at an 85-page document.
I hope you looked at it.
No, I did look at it.
twice. It's a lot of material.
Before I look at it.
There were a few blank pages in there, though.
Okay, so we are here to talk about mixed-use standards. This is ordinance 22-19. So why are we here again? There were some issues raised with the last project that came through about how intense it was with residential uses as opposed to a broader range of a variety of uses. There was concerns about the way or the lack of neighborhood integration, and then also the design aesthetic. It looked like an apartment complex, and that's kind of why we started the discussions again. So just generally, the principles of a good mixed-use development is going to have greater housing variety and densities. It's going to reduce the distances between housing, workplace, retail, other destinations. Whole concept, you live and work, shop and play in the same location. The development's compact so that you can get in more rooftops, more people to make the commercial more viable. Hopefully strengthens your neighborhood character, promotes a pedestrian and bicycle-friendly environment. The idea is to get people out of their car, get them walking or biking. We've got a number of mixed-use zones that encourage a diversity of uses with each other. Neighborhood center, community commercial, campus residential, mixed use, commercial, town center 1 and 2. But really we're going to talk about mixed use specifically as a zoning designation. Here's our zoning map. It's kind of a little fuzzy, but we've got 9 areas that are currently zoned mixed use. You've got the area by campus, this area at 10th and 2nd. This area down here on 6th West, this is Homestead we've talked about. This area was recently rezoned off of 10th West and 2nd South. Crum Brothers by the high school, this large block south of the high school. Riverwoods, that complex, this is the area just next to the river. And then this is the area down by, right across from McDonald's where we're going to improve this intersection. So we've got 3 different types of mixed use in the city. Horizontal mixed use, so that's like a Riverwoods concept or a Homestead concept. It's generally things that are spread out horizontally. A vertical mixed use is where they're arranged vertically, so like a Morty's, a Blue Square. And then a hybrid, which is a combination of both. We've got both of those, and I'll go through those just to give you some context. So Riverwoods, you've got all this residential on the east side of 2nd East. You've got all this commercial over here. When you look at it from a broader perspective, from mixed use, it makes good sense. You've got people that can live there. They can walk across the street and work. They can go eat, shop, whatever. When you look at it from a design aesthetic, it's really not super awesome, you know, because you have things that are still spread out. They're still separated by a roadway, even though they were built by the same developer. Provide you some of the benefits, but not all the benefits. Homestead, this is the one that's under construction on 6th West, 2nd North. Kind of the same concept. You've got a lot of residential with a small piece of commercial, but it does have a busy street here, busy street here, and it will have a busier street here on 3 sides. It's got some of the same benefits of commercial. As you go around it, you've got commercial and employment opportunities, so folks can live here and walk to work. But it's hard to integrate this side into the stuff to the east because you've got so many barriers in the way. You've got a railroad, you've got a busy street. You can't just necessarily put in a pedestrian crossing across the rail line. So there's some challenges associated with that. Morty's, or people been to Morty's, up by the university. Obviously it's vertical. You've got food on the bottom, residential above it, and it fits into the context of what's around it as well as adjacency to the university. Blue Square, kind of the same concept, even though it's zoned CR, it still has some commercial on the ground floor, some residential above it, but these are all student housing. But still, you get people that live there, they can still eat downstairs, shop, things like that. Renewal is coming in soon for construction permits. They're on the corner of 3rd South, 1st West, vertical mixed-use product, commercial on the ground floor, residential above it. This raised some issues with how we qualify our parking, whether it's commercial or whether it's residential. Started some other discussions. Park Avenue is under construction. It's behind Hobby Lobby. Hobby Lobby's over on the east side. This is a hybrid mixture where you've got some freestanding residential, but you also have some buildings that have commercial on the ground floor and then some residential around it. It looks like a residential product, but you do get the benefits of having commercial integrated in some residential uses. Brickyard, this is not yet permitted for construction. This is on 8th North and 50 West. It's got 2 buildings. It's got 3 floors residential above, 1 floor commercial, and and then a second building, which is all residential. It provides some of those amenities of mixed use. It's near commercial, people can walk, but there's some questions about whether or not it provides enough commercial. Warden Lofts is an adaptive reuse project. It's got some live-work units in there, but it's predominantly residential. Westfield Lofts is under construction. It's on the west side of town. It's a little unique in that the things on the ground floor will probably be kind of quasi-manufacturing, kind of those different kinds of uses that we're not quite sure that will be compatible with residential uses above, but if you buy into it, you kind of know what's going to be next door. You know that a guy's working on cars or transmissions or things like that. And then Sola Vista is down at the Y, on the east side of the Y. Hasn't been permitted yet for construction, but it's ground floor commercial, up 4 floors of residential. And then there's a public road on the back side of that will be constructed.
But it is a commercial zone.
Commercial zone.
It's not a mixed use, it's a
Right.
commercial that's choosing to use the residential component of
Correct.
the commercial zone.
So some of the challenges with the mixed use zone or approach is there's not really a right way to do it. And each developer has their own methodology, but it's also, it's hard to have a set of go forth and conquer standards and then apply it here, here, and here. It really doesn't work that way. It's also tough because of our economy is changing. You tend to see more big box retailers as opposed to small, locally owned businesses. So that's a challenge to try to recruit those smaller mom and pop types of retail operations in terms of having a mixture of uses. The changing American dream, not everybody can afford home ownership. So these tend to be a rental type of product. And that creates some angst when they get sited in a neighborhood. People don't want to see more rentals, but we can't regulate who owns it versus who lives there. We also think that it's important when you do a mixed-use project that it fits within the context of the neighborhood. And then as we looked at Homestead, it's really hard to integrate a lot of these sites because you have some constraints. So it's a little challenging in that respect. Some other challenges, there's a lack of understanding of development principles, usually on our part because we don't do it for a living. So we think it's just cut down the overall density, should make it a nicer product, but that doesn't always work. You need rooftops to make the commercial work. Location is important, so when we do a decision on a zone change or a rezone to mixed use, we should really ask the question, is this appropriate for this location? Is this going to make good sense? And location is really important from a mixed use perspective. Finance is an issue. We hear that all the time about how people can finance a project. And I think that's based on really lender comfort with a mixed-use type of product. And looking at the literature and looking at other examples of other communities, there's really not a magic ratio of residential to commercial. There's not a magic number that you can say if you do this much residential, you can do this much commercial, and it all works out. It's really specific to a site within a given community. And then NIMBYism is a big issue too. I mean, we've heard that on a lot of these projects about those people that live across the tracks and how they integrate to our neighborhood. So that's one we always have to overcome. So the proposed changes to the regulations, in your packet I gave you the existing regulations, and then hopefully you could read through how we got to the proposals. We added some design characteristics to the intent language to help frame the approach better on what we hope to see. It's a challenge when you have an intent language because it's not regulatory, but at least it sets the framework for the things that we want to see within a mixed-use project. We reduced the base density from 30 to the acre to 20 to the acre and then added it back in a higher rate of density bonuses. So in the mixed-use zone, you could get up to 50 units per acre. We require ground floor commercial on all buildings adjacent to arterial or collector streets. So put commercial near the busy streets and put the residential behind it. We encourage more commercial. You can put commercial anywhere in a mixed-use project. And we've also said you can't put residential on those busy streets. You can do it on the back side of the building, but not on the front side. We increased the minimum commercial building area. The italicized numbers over here are the current, and on the left are the proposed numbers or rates of commercial. So if you're doing a large project on the scale of Homestead, currently we require 600 square feet of commercial. The proposal is to require at least 40,000 square feet of commercial. We define better the ground floor residential space, and this is kind of a carryover from the commercial zone, where we wanted to make sure that you couldn't include like ground floor parking as part of your commercial space, and then also your residential, kind of those residential ancillary uses wouldn't count as your commercial space.
Meaning,
Meaning like a private pool, you couldn't call that as your commercial.
commercial?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So we've created the ability that you can substitute usable outdoor space for your required commercial area. And it's on a 1-to-1 ratio up to 50% of the required commercial area. You've got to make sure it's integrated in the overall project design. It's got to provide functional public gathering areas. And we've defined public gathering areas as plazas, parks, public squares, sidewalks in front of small businesses, courtyards with seating, any area that you can set up that provides outdoor seating, visually prominent, and it's easily accessible. So the idea is you create these little gathering areas, whether it's on a micro scale or on a macro scale.
And it's public.
And it's got to be public.
So those are the only types of usable outdoor space that you would allow the 1-to-1 switch for?
No, not necessarily, but that was the direction we heard from Planning Commission about trying to refine what does that mean when you talk about usable outdoor space. So they didn't want to see private balconies be included in that.
Right,
But you could have a playground that would be included in that.
So how did the definition of usable outdoor space change?
Well, it really hasn't changed. It's just been elaborated here so people understand what we've thought through in usable outdoor space in the current code. So in the current 1728, we talk about outdoor space, or usable outdoor space versus open space. And open space is generally those green areas, landscaping, lawn areas. Usable outdoor space are the more publicly oriented spaces, but also include private spaces. So private balconies can be included in that. We just wanted to make sure that we weren't getting credit for private balcony space or private gathering areas.
Private meaning individual to a unit versus private meaning to the development. So if you have outdoor space, let's say a basketball court, you can confine it to the use of your residents. It doesn't have to be anyone in the city of Logan or Cache County can come and use it.
Right.
It just has to be available for common use. I guess, so common use versus public use.
Well, and that's a distinction we all want to make sure that we're on the same page with, because what we heard was if you're going to do like a usable outdoor space in lieu of commercial, it's got to be gathering space that's available to everybody.
Everybody in the community, not
Well,
just
I
that
mean,
community.
but the communities aren't closed. Just because you're doing a mixed-use project doesn't mean you have a wall around it that people can't enter into it. Because if you have commercial space, you want not just the residents to use it, you want everyone to be able to use it.
But like at Homestead, I mean, they have a pool, but you have to have a pass, be a resident and have a pass.
Yeah, some of the projects have private amenities.
That's what I'm saying, like, so outdoor private amenity for the use of the residents counts towards the outdoor space or not?
Would not count, no. The idea is you're creating usable outdoor space that is available to everybody. The idea is it's integrated into a connection outward. So when you look at Homestead or Riverwoods, those projects have amenities that are geared towards our residents. So you've got to have a key card or swipe something to get in, or a key. But the idea is you create that green area, or where I can go sit and drink a soda in front of a shop and talk to folks. That's like a public gathering area or a lawn space.
So my question is still, are plazas, parks, public squares, sidewalks is a little hard for me, but courtyards, and other area that provides outdoor seating, are those the only things that you can trade 1-to-1 for?
Well, it says any other area, so would that give Planning Commission a little bit of discretion
Yeah.
to determine what meets?
We don't want to have somebody create a stormwater detention pond and call that a public gathering area.
Well, I know that, but how, you're always talking about how it has to be codified, and this is still fuzzy to me.
I don't know, if you can refine it, feel free.
Okay.
This is the language we came up with, and if you think it should say something differently, or it should say it in a different manner, or should add or subtract, or it should be 1 through 10,
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I'm just trying to be really clear that I
Yeah.
understand what the slide means.
So there may be outdoor space that if it's private for the residents of that building, don't count towards the one-to-one. Their substitution of
Because they're
commercial.
replacing a commercial space, which would be open to the public with something, then it has to still be open to the public.
Yeah, the intention is going to be available to the general public and not just an amenity for the project. Doesn't mean you can't do amenities for your project. Just means if you're asking for this
For the right.
substitution, then what you're creating has got to be available for the public. And- and-
Okay.
And we put sidewalks in here because we envision something like Center Street, which has got,
big
you know,
sidewalk, yeah.
15 to 20 feet wide. You've got room for some small tables. You've got that little area next to the pancake shop, or whatever it's called, or, you know, so you got areas that people consider the table and hang out. That's the idea, is to create those small enclaves where folks can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, but if we need to add things to make it clear, we can do that too. We added another in lieu of, so if you're proposing a mixed-use project in close proximity to existing commercial areas, the planning commission wanted to allow you a reduction in your own commercial. The idea is you're putting some residential near existing commercial, and so you could reduce up to 50% of your commercial requirement if you're within 1,000 feet of a commercial area that has the required amount of commercial square footage. And so the example that was used was developing next to the hospital. The hospital, you know, is X amount of size. It's got 1,000 employees, provides these types of commercial benefits. So if you plop a mixed-use product next to it, would you still have to build your level of commercial? And the planning commission said, no, let's give them some break in doing that. The provision is it's got to be connected to that existing commercial area, either bike or pets. There's got to be sidewalk connectivity, and it's got to be within 1,000 feet as you measure along a pedestrian route. The same way we measure for alcohol compliance is, how do I walk there? How can I get there within 1,000 feet? So it's the same concept.
But we have some things that are called commercial that would hardly fit the thought process that brought this about, which was, well, if there's a grocery store outside of the project, then we would like to let them, you know, count that. But what if it's, as one of our residents said, what if it's storage units? It's commercial.
Yeah, I don't think that qualifies, and I think you've got enough discretion that they can say, no, it doesn't qualify, because when you look at a storage unit, you know, the mini warehousing, it provides literally, like what, one job. It doesn't provide any ability for any kind of commercial interaction. I can't just as a public go in there and buy something. So there's got to be some relationship. I mean, in the case of the hospital, I can't go buy an MRI, but I can live next door where I work. So there's a little bit different in that respect, but it's a good point. And we kind of talked that through, and I'm not quite sure how we write it so that you say you can't do it near certain uses, but near other uses.
It
Yeah.
says, "The planning commission may permit the substitution of open space at a ratio of 1:1 for up to 50% of the required commercial area, provided the proposed open space is integrated into the overall design." Well, is that adjacent now, or is that?
Well, the next one is commercial
Integrated into
proximity.
But commercial,
the
so
overall design of the
basically,
project.
if they
And
did both of
provide
these, they would
funding.
have to have no commercial.
Yeah, that's an option somebody could pursue.
And so then it's not mixed use.
Yeah, it's just residential.
Then it's just residential, yeah.
Yeah, I don't like it either.
So that's, okay, keep going.
Okay, the next one is require proportionality of construction timing. The complaint we heard about was all the residential's going to be constructed, and then the last little bit will be the commercial. What if they go belly up or sell it, then what? So this is a requirement that says each type of use has to be constructed in proportion to each other use. We did put the get out of jail free card on the end because there are situations where you can't construct a certain element without everything else being constructed. So there's got to be some flexibility in how it's approached, but the idea is that we're going to have proportionality of construction and timing. We put in a caveat to require a variety of residential structure types. So based on the project size, if you're over 10 acres, you got to have 3 residential structure types. So this could be a townhome, it could be cottage style homes, it could be stacked units, it could be, like senior housing, things like that. So the idea is to get a diversity of housing.
So housing structure types are not use types. So senior housing is not a structure type.
Well, it's built as a certain type of structure relative to other types of structures. So you could build it as an apartment building versus you could build townhomes over here. So we define structure type in our code. We've got, 8 or 9 different types of structures. Residential structures.
Yeah, they're not use types.
That's not based on use.
So if senior housing is not a structure type?
But if you put an assisted living in there, that would be a commercial use in that building. So I guess it would depend on how you determine. Do you know what I mean? Like,
But then it's in the commercial section, not in the residential section.
right.
So that's,
So in your packet, I gave you a copy of the definition section and how we define different structure types.
okay.
Structure, yeah, it's the form of it.
Okay, the residential density bonus options. So you can get up to 30 additional units per acre based on one of these 6 approaches or a combination thereof. So if you did structured parking, you get 20 additional units per acre, additional usable outdoor space, 20 to the acre, vertical mixed use, 15 to the acre, complete streets design, 15 to the acre, more commercial, 15 to the acre, and then affordable housing units, additional 5 units. So it's cumulative, so you can do a mixture of them, but you can't exceed 30 additional units per acre.
So if you trade your commercial for additional usable outdoor space, do you automatically get a density bonus of 20?
No, and I'll go through the
Okay,
numbers on it.
thank you.
We added a specific residential front building setback, 0 to 20 feet, so there's latitude to set that building back from the roadway to make it more livable. We increased the maximum building height to 70 feet, so currently it's 58 feet. And the language is 58 feet along the roadway, and you can use a height transition to get back to 70 and turn over the project. Even if you're still adjacent to a NR zone, you've still got to comply with the height transitions that we've got codified elsewhere. So you start at 35 feet and then go up from there. Added reference to the alternative parking language. The idea is to encourage people to find a way to share parking so that we can reduce the amount of asphalt that's out there. We'll put the burden on them if they want to go after reduction in parking. They've got to prepare a plan. Increase the size of minimum width of commercial sidewalks to 15 feet to allow for kind of those areas in front of the store for advertising, benches, seating, pots, things like that, as well as you've got walking areas and you've got street trees on the other side of it.
So again, you put that as one of the ones they can trade 1 for 1. You listed it as an open space, and now you're requiring it anyway.
No, you can't get a twofer by saying we require this, but then I'm going to get credit for it. It's
Okay.
minimum standard is this. If you want to create additional usable outdoor space, you've got to do that.
Okay, okay.
On top of it.
On top of it, yeah. We also, in the land set-aside requirements, currently you've got to set aside 10% for outdoor space, 10% for open space, and then we added a caveat that of your usable outdoor space, at least 40% of that has to be minimum usable outdoor space, those public gathering areas. So it's not just balconies and stuff, you've got to do some of those public areas.
And public meaning true public, not public for within your.
Correct.
And so those are the pieces, that portion is the piece that you would get to trade for your commercial, that 40%, for 40%.
No. It's in addition to this. So if you've got a 10-acre site that you're going to develop, 10% of that 10 acres has to be set aside as open space. 10% has to be set aside as usable outdoor space. So that's, out of that 10 acres, you're setting aside an acre for open space and an acre for usable outdoor space. And within that acre of usable outdoor space, 40% has to be public gathering areas. So out of that acre, you've got.
So if you want to make more public area, you could start to trade commercial.
If you want to do additional above the base standard
Okay.
to get trade-offs for commercial, you can do that. The density bonus program, it's in 1734. So again, it's up to 30 units per acre, performance-based. It's cumulative, so you can do a variety, but you can't go above 30 to the acre. It's discretionary, so you've got to lay out a plan on how you're going to do it and how you're going to meet the minimum standards.
It's discretionary on the part of the city or on the part of the
planning
developer?
commission.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So structured parking, if you're going to park at least 50% of your required parking within a structure, we'll give you a bonus for doing that of 20 units per acre. And that excludes individual garages, carports, or similar structures. So the idea is you're going to build some kind of structure either above ground or below ground to accommodate at least 50% of your required parking.
So if you're doing a townhome, the townhome's driveway and garage doesn't count towards
That's
that.
So additional usable outdoor space, public gathering areas, get a density bonus for doing this. If you increase your minimum requirement by 100%, basically double it, you'll get a bonus for doing it. And again, these are public gathering areas that are open to the public. They're integrated throughout the overall project design. Vertical mixed use, 15 units to the acre, ground floor commercial, residential above. Complete streets, and I'll show you what a graphic looks like in this. The idea is you're going to incorporate a complete street design into your overall road program. It balances everybody, all the different users, whether you're in a car, bike, ped, transit. The idea is that everybody given a fair share to access. And you've got wider sidewalks, narrower traveling lanes, bike lanes, crosswalks, refuge medians, bus pullouts, etc. And this is the idea is our typical street is on the left. What we want to see on the right is you've got fewer travel lanes, more bike lanes. You've got the ability to cross streets. And this won't work in every situation, but internally to projects, it should work out okay. Back to the bonuses, you get an additional 15 units per acre if you do additional commercial by 50%. Affordable housing, if you've got a project site larger than 3 acres and you do at least 5% of your total housing units as affordable, you'll get a bonus to 5 units per acre. And then this is just a graphic that kind of illustrates what we're looking for in a mixed-use project. So on the lower left, if you look at the street crossings, the wider sidewalks, landscaping you've got, nose-in parking, narrow lanes. This is a public gathering area, so you've got a little plaza here, you've got seating in front of your commercial activity, you've got some green space right here. And this back here would show you kind of the idea of the height transitions. Start a little bit lower, then work your way back up as you move internally to the project. Other than that, any questions?
I asked a lot of them during your
I need to study it a lot more, but I'm excited about the potentials for this. Especially for a larger project.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll have a public hearing on this in 2 weeks?
2 weeks. Unless we choose to continue it further beyond that.
I'm just going to say I have a feeling it's going to be continued because it's pretty complex.
It's a lot, yeah.
It's-
It's a lot
it's a
to do
lot.
in one, especially if we end up making any changes.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Chief Jensen.
Well, I recall going through the same motion here, 10 years ago, trying to decide what's a reasonable distance for a police officer, and at the time, a fire department personnel, how far they should live away from the city in case there's an emergency situation. One of the things that affects this notion today is recruitment and retention, as well as just affordable living as it relates to employees throughout the county. Part of what drives this notion is just the competitive nature of trying to reach out and bring people into the city for employment, but probably equally and maybe even more importantly is to be able to retain our employees. So one of the things we gauge that off of is what are others doing. I hate playing catch up, but at the same time we have to be mindful of what our competitors are doing as well. So as I talk about this potential change in the residency requirements of the police, it's to equal the major competitor for me, which is the Sheriff's Department. And the Sheriff's Department allows basically what I'm proposing. We don't want there to be a great difference between us that might tip the scales one way or the other for either recruiting employees or retaining our employees. And that's been noted in the past that we kind of swap employees back and forth periodically as the employees see perhaps greater benefit to working for one of the other departments. The other thing about this is simply affordability. You folks are well aware that Logan Center, as you move out from Logan, out into the county areas, the potential to find a house that is somewhat more affordable is greater than trying to buy a home in downtown Logan or the surrounding areas. Now, I don't want you to worry too much about this. As currently written, we have a 17-mile radius within Cache Valley that our employees can live. Currently, in fact, I went through it this morning. I looked at every one of my employees, and I have one person that lives in the 21 to 30 minute range, if you've looked at the map that's suggested. So it's not even close to the 17-mile radius ring that we have in place today. Moving that out 3 miles, it seems kind of small, but I really do think it affects our ability to recruit, retain, and to give options to employees to be able to afford a home, to be able to afford living in Cache Valley as costs go up. This is a little bit of a change in that it's not just 3 miles, but it's 3 miles that include areas that are outside of Cache County. As the mayor and I talked about this, neither one of us were very comfortable with the notion of counting on our employees that we may need to call back for service in an emergency situation to live over the canyon and down into Brigham. As you well know, that Sardine Canyon can be very difficult at times to pass, and we didn't feel that was the most prudent thing as we wrote this policy. So you'll notice kind of a skew in the map that has been provided to you. That's the reason for that, is we didn't want those folks potentially counting on Sardine Canyon as their quickest route back to town if we need them. So that's the notion. I hope it makes sense to you. It makes sense to me. We're trying to hold ourselves together as departments and trying to do things that are somewhat inventive. I don't know that 3 miles is really inventing the wheel again, but I think it will be helpful for us.
And we're not changing the requirements for firefighters, and part of the reason is that our police officers, they take a car home, that's part of their job, and so with lights and siren responding to an emergency, they could get back that much more quickly, where firefighters don't have that option.
Questions or thoughts?
So we could have guys living in Idaho now.
Yeah, if you're familiar with where the dip is, as you come out of Franklin towards Preston, that's roughly as far as they would get into Idaho. But it doesn't bother me. I hope it doesn't bother anybody else.
Can they get as far as Fairview?
Fairview, help me.
Well, it's below.
North of Lewiston.
Well, Weston, like parts of Weston would be okay, but not.
They would not get into Weston
Yeah.
from here. I don't know where Fairview is. I'm sorry. I'm seeing Lewiston on the map, but
So small.
It's north of Lewiston. So it's like even with the big hill in Preston. You know, as you're coming into Preston, there's that great big hill. And it's just in the middle.
you'd have to look at your,
I'm just curious.
your
It's
map.
just-
I don't know.
So I have a logistics question related to this. So if I'm applying for a position, is there, from an HR standpoint, when are they given the policy as to where they can live? Is there a time limit that they have to move in? I'm assuming all of those things are in place, but just out of curiosity, so I apply, I live in Preston, am I given a year to move into the boundaries? Am I given 6 months? I mean, is that part of our HR policy now,
I
given
don't
that we
think that
have this
that's
in place?
written in policy. I struggled with that a little bit coming in from Vernal when I moved here. And I was 6 months. In fact, I lived in Farmington for several months while I was transitioning to Logan. And 6 months, the citizens started to get restless a little bit about me living that far away, and I did too. So I think that's been more of a talking to people and understanding their expectations and their hopes, and then of course offering what we need from them as well. So I'd have to research that, but I don't think there's policy that drives that. Any notion, guys? Yeah,
I'm looking right now, I don't know off the top of my head.
okay.
Certainly we give them time to transition.
Right, but I mean, if it's been 2 years and they're like, oh, I just haven't found the right house, you know, at some point, I would,
Yeah.
it would just be wise to have something in
Well, we
writing,
do
or at
have-
least when they're hired, that the expectation of what those boundaries are and what a reasonable timeframe is for meeting them.
Right, thank you. Other thoughts or questions?
Anyone else?
Thank you.
We'll talk about it in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rich, you get to wind us up.
4 items to consider. The first is request to appropriate $390,000 for a after-school grant. Request to appropriate $25,000 for a library grant received from the state of Utah for online cataloging. Request to appropriate $2,617 for the communication center. That's our 911 fund for an EMS grant they received. And lastly is a request to appropriate $712 for a reimbursement for the police department for federal cases.
So our agenda says $2,617 funding the community center.
Yeah, I should say communication, sorry about
Okay.
that. That was our bad, clearly.
Community center.
I was like, huh?
And I don't know why we call it 911 fund the communication center, but we do.
The resolution does say communication, just the agenda.
Just the agenda, doesn't it?
is-
Autocorrect, I'm sure.
But the resolution is correct.
Any questions of Rich? That will be an action item in 2 weeks as well. Are there other considerations? I have one.
That was a
Anybody
compound
else?
sentence.
We received a note that is addressed to all of us, and I'll just read it really quickly. Quote, "Let us be grateful to the people who make us happy. They are the charming gardeners who make our souls blossom." From Marcel Proust. "The golden rule that always works. Expect nothing, appreciate everything. From the bottom of my heart, I thank you and appreciate all you have done. Your generosity has given us new hope." And that is from Ben Barizi, Logan City Fire Department, Local 2148 Union President. Addressed to all of us. So, if there is no further business for this body, we are adjourned.
Smashing.
Smashing.
Well, I found that presentation